I'm with Dr. Beth Hedva, who is a Jewish mystic and also been mentoring me and helping me with a lot of things over the decades. And we have been discussing what is healthy power. So, Dr. Beth Hedva, how would you define what is healthy power?
So I like to actually depersonalize the question of what a power is, and I go back to the physics definition that power is the energy required to do work. It's very simple, and that has to do with how is it that we assert or direct energy over time to have a particular effect or impact. Healthy power has to do with what we add to that, what's the effect we want to have. And ultimately, when we filter that sense of power and assertion through our ego, that can become self-serving, or it can be serving a greater purpose, a larger than just individual self that has a positive impact or positive effect collectively. So when we look at healthy power, I think we have to look at power in itself is nothing more than energy that's having direction and has impact. And what do we want to add to that?
Mm. And what particular dimension and what our intention is with our power, and how do we step into that energy and into that flow of energy, I think is so important at this time, in particular for women. And what are your feelings and thoughts on that?
Yeah, so before we get into the question of women, because I think women's power is especially important right now. Um, when you're talking about intention, the ancient mystery traditions talk about how energy follows thought. And the next piece, so our focus, our mental focus is essential. But also what's equally essential is our capacity to witness and observe the impact of how energy influences reality. What is the effect? And so we have to pay attention to, let's say we're talking about in relationship to a person, and we have an intention for healing, let's say, and we notice that in our conversation, their brow is getting knit and their muscles are getting tense. This is giving us a signal that we're not necessarily having a positive impact in that conversation. Our intention is not being met. So we have to pay attention to the feedback that we're getting so we can then course correct and meet and refocus so that the energy then has the fulfillment that we intended. So now when we're talking about women and women's power, women in particular are geared more towards that kind of intuitive sensitivity. Men and women are intuitive. I don't want to say that men are not intuitive, but women, because of the way we are wired, we have a wider corpus callosum. So there's more communication between right and left brains. And the right brain in particular is taking in the global picture. It's taking in some of those more sensate, visual, kinesthetic gut impressions, our emotional impressions. And we're taking all of that information and at the same time analyzing it, which is the left brain's capacity. So we have something called intuitive thinking. And then when we add that heart-centered perspective, the heart brain, if you will, that is able to connect in energetically and influence the way our brain is thinking. And then we also add the gut brain. Of course, you and I have talked about that in the past as well. How are we digesting the information that we're receiving? Women and women's power, we gear ourselves towards that. There are also a whole bunch of traditions that I would love to share with you, but I would like to hear your thoughts a bit on women's power as well, because I know that that's an area of specialty for you.
Thanks for asking. I Women's power is not power over, it's power with, to me. So, for example, when with a team, when we're working with a team, I'm working with a team. I'm not talking at a team. So it's a very different way of working. And intuition, it's interesting that you bring that up because intuition is a huge part of the way we work at Awaken Companies. We follow the intuitive threads. If something is meant to be followed, we follow it. If something isn't, we don't. And we also, in terms of working with teams and leaders and coaching, and definitely intuition has played a huge role in terms of the way we work and also the way we play. And the recognition for me personally is that everybody is somebody's child, and I am somebody's child. And also, everybody is a leader, and I am a leader. So, acknowledging that. And for me, I'd say over the last few years, and it was you that introduced me to Terra Mandala, that said, you're to go to this lama, you're to meet this lama, you're to go to this event. And now I think that having that tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana, and Dzogchen has just empowered my voice to come out more fully. That spiritual, having that spiritual practice. And so there's something called Vajrayana pride, or Vajra pride, which is just the inherent worth of everybody, and just take us all being able to take our seats. So in terms of women's power, I don't, it's us taking our seats and then allowing everybody else to take their seats.
Mm. So there's, when you're talking about seeds, this is another part of women's power that's really significant. This comes from the Sikh tradition. And I like to blend it with an ancient Western mystery tradition, which is called the Blood Mysteries. But from the Sikh tradition, there's understanding that women's power is focused in three ways: through the womb, which is, of course, where seeds are planted and grow into new life, and then through the breasts, which is how a baby is nourished and when it comes out of the womb. And then the third is the vision that a mother has for that soul that's growing inside of her in her womb, how it's going to fulfill its mission in life. What was it born to do? And so women's power very much has to do with how do we allow new life to be taking root, which often is happening in the dark, in the womb. And also, how is it that new life comes forward in the world? It comes through this very narrow thing called a birth canal. And so, being able to withstand the intensity of pressure that is moving us forward, and to trust that process, that as we go through sometimes challenging and difficult times, it's part of the birthing process, and that there's something coming through the other side that is positive, is that we seeded and are seeking to be born. So we're not afraid of the hard work, so to speak. That's women's power too. And then the other element then is, now that it's something has been born, our vision, our intention, our dream, our desire has been born, whether it's in our relationships, in the birth of a dream, a birth of a paradigm, or birth of a baby, it doesn't matter. It needs to be nourished.
Mm-hmm.
The metaphor of nourishing at the breast is about compassion. It's the heart. And so how do we nourish those wishes and dreams and paradigms and what we're bringing into the world with the heart of compassion, with that relational connection that you were talking about, is so much a part of women's power. But also then, as that gets a life of its own, if you will, we never lose the vision, the higher intention of what it is that's being born and how it needs to be guided and supported as it grows in power and strength to have a life of its own. And at some point, our wishes, dreams, paradigms do get a life of their own. They're no longer dependent on us. Can we allow it then to fulfill? And can we then act as that mirror, support, or advisor rather than director, controller?
Mm-hmm. Um, Beth Hedva, you're speaking to one of the things we also do at Awaken Company, which is the weaving of wisdom traditions. And I think during this time, it is so important that these wisdom traditions, these mystery traditions, as you were just describing, come forward to help guide us in terms of how to be and behave. So literally the process you described in terms of the womb, the heart, and then the opening of the head chakra is really what I sensed when you were speaking. Um, that happens in our organizations. And to pretend that it's separate, that our organizations are separate from our spirituality or from these ancient processes, I think has caused us in many ways to go way off kilter, to become so left brain focused instead of right brain focused.
Or even an integrative focus,
Yes.
where we maintain, the thing about the left brain that I find so fascinating is that it is only connected to the right brain, whereas the right brain has connections to the brainstem, to the limbic system, i.e. our sensate motor receptors and the information we're receiving instinctively, as well as the limbic system, which is our emotional brain and how we feel. And there's also that experience of when all of these signals come together, the left brain is able to put them into a sense of order and organized perspective because it observes, it witnesses. It's not in the soup of all of this information. It's able to take it and create meaning and a story out of it for us instead of being overloaded or overwhelmed by emotions or feelings or, the impressions, the gut feelings. This is something that I think is really important when we're looking at women's power, because women's power is connected with that more empathic element. And because it has not been honored as a valuable resource, many women describe themselves as empaths. And instead of knowing how to work with that power, feel overloaded or overwhelmed by the impressions that we receive, the telepathic impressions, if you will, or the energetic transmissions that we receive through our gut. And so we are learning as women of power, people to empower, understanding that we're receiving these signals for a really important purpose, and how to not personalize the energy or the information we're receiving. It's just information. And so now I've got these feelings and these gut feelings, emotional feelings, images, pictures, all kinds of psychic resources. Great. Now, what do I want to do with it? What is the information about? What is it guiding me? How do I take it to that, as we were talking about, the sixth center, the wisdom source, the higher mind, which is allowing us to integrate all of this information into a new vision, a new perspective that's connected to something beyond us that's actually ultimately guiding us. That's also, the ancient mystery traditions say that we're not separate from a universal power, a universal source that's guiding us. We are instruments for that and of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important for people to know that everybody is part of the mandala and that we need everybody's contribution and we need everybody's centers. The invitation is to bring the centers to alignment so that we can have that as part of the mandala. And it's also okay to be a work in progress, because I believe if we're still here, we're all works in progress until that time comes. So the invitation is for us to cultivate our self-awareness, our self-development, so that we can be a benefit and of service to the whole, and be in that alignment with, as you spoke of, with alignment of that higher source, that vertical dimension, which is always knocking at our door, which is always here.
Exactly. Yeah. And, that self with a capital S that the Hindu traditions talk about, self-realization, or the ancient Egyptians talk about the awakened self. And in psychology, we talk about the transcendent or actualized self. We are beginning, even in the Western culture, to recognize that there's more to us than just our psychosocial self, that we are, in fact, part of some more transcendent experience. And I guess the real question is, also, if we're looking at how do we allow ourselves to bring that power in through the personal sphere so that we can do the work, the greater work of recognizing our connection and relationship, not only to a universal source, but that universal source is connected to everyone and everything. So can we on a personal level begin to recognize relationship, our relationship like you and me to each other, which of course is very heartfelt. And
Yes.
also our relationship to others who maybe are different from us, but still part of us because we're all connected in relationship to the earth and to all of life on earth, and even our relationship to something, some great mystery beyond anything that we know, beyond this planet. That it's none of that is separate from us. It's all part of who we are, and we get to have a relationship to all of it.
Mm-hmm. How amazing. How amazing it is to be here right now and to actually be on this spinning blue planet together with all these beings trying to figure out what is happening. It's a great and a great invitation for us to open the doors and windows within so that we can understand externally more fully. So thank you so much, Beth Hedva.
Such a pleasure, truly, always a pleasure to connect with you, Catherine. Thank you.